Welcome back to Starkiller Base for our latest installment of our SoR card analysis series. Today we're going to be covering the blue hero cards from our upcoming set. To start things off with the Jedi Acolyte. This is the non-unique blue hero character with 7 hit points. The die sides show a 1 melee, a 1 focus, a 2 focus, a 1 discard, a resource, and a blank. They cost 9 points, which is a bit steep for 7 hit points. The character ability reads, before you resolve this die, increase its value by 1 if it's showing the same symbol as one of your other dice. I guess naturally you'd think that the best thing to do would be to pair it with other Jedi Acolytes, which you could do, but you'll see that the dice don't really do a lot for damage or whatnot. They're more like an Akbar die. Actually, it's almost identical to an Akbar die now that I look at it. So they're a good supporting character, but they need somebody else to make them shine. So you could run 2 Jedi Acolytes and Elite Ray or something like that to get the 4 dice in, or maybe you'll see Luminara Unduli coming up next would be really interesting with these guys since they're non-unique. So their dice have really good support, but they need some upgrades to really take effect. I mean, if you can resolve a 3 focus, anytime you can resolve a 3 focus, I'm a happy man, personally. I think that they're a little expensive for what they do and the number of hit points they have, but I guess we'll see. And I have no idea what species that is on the art, but it is cool looking. Next we have Chirrut Îmwe, the Blind Warrior. He has 11 hit points. His dice is a 1 ranged, a +2 ranged, a 2 melee, a +1 melee, a resource, and a blank. He's a 12/16. His character ability reads, you cannot play blue abilities on this character, and after you activate this character, you may reroll all of your dice showing blanks. He's kind of interesting. I mean, if you put him in a mixed color deck, so that he can bring blue cards, that's all well and good, but normally you put a blue character in one of those decks to bring blue abilities. And if you can't play the blue abilities on the blue character, that may be the only blue character in your deck, then you can't even bring blue abilities because they're effectively dead cards. So I guess he's there for blue events and blue supports and certain blue cards like lightsabers and that sort of thing. His dice are really interesting in that he can go for a melee or a ranged deck, but of course, in doing so, he doesn't do either of them very well. He's definitely an interesting character. His ability to reroll blanks is always nice. Ideally, you never want to have blanks in the first place, but obviously you're going to roll some because that's the nature of Destiny, so being able to reroll them is pretty nice. I've heard people playing Chirrut with Mon Mothma, both elite, and doing rather well. And just sort of, yeah, I mean, like his dice, the 2 melee is great to resolve on its own, even if you don't have any melee in the rest of your deck. The +1 melee ends up being kind of dead at that point, but I mean, you can put in a couple of the cards that you'll see, like the Handcrafted Bow or lightsabers or whatnot to do that. But he definitely can synergize with a ranged deck too, so I think he'll make for some really interesting builds that can bring blue events in and just use guns or something along those lines for all the upgrades. Next we have Luminara Unduli, the Inspiring Commander. She has 10 hit points. Her dice show a 1 melee, a 2 melee, a 1 focus, a resource, a special, and a blank. She's a 13/17, which is pretty pricey. Her special reads, resolve one of your character dice, increasing its value by 2 or by 3 instead if it is a non-unique character die. So you can see how this could be really interesting. If you use her special on a 2 melee damage on a Padawan, she's doing 5 damage from that die now. That's a huge increase. However, she's sort of like Poe, I find, in that she costs so much that it's really difficult to do anything with her short of putting her in as a non-elite with a couple of non-uniques. So it may be better to put her in, you know, do like a Luminara Ray deck, both elite. You get the 4 dice. It's only got 20 hit points. I've seen her played with, I think it was a Jedi Acolyte and a Padawan, and they did some interesting things. But I'm not really sure. I'm not all that impressed with the blue characters in this set for heroes, but there are some interesting blue hero cards for sure. Next we have Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Mysterious Hermit. He has 11 hit points. His dice show a 1 melee, a 3 melee, a 1 focus, a 2 focus, a resource, and a blank. He's a 16/20. His character reads Guardian, so you got the Guardian keyword there. And then his ability is, before this character is defeated, you may play a blue card from your hand or discard pile for free. One of the things that first came up on this in the Star Wars Destiny Facebook group was they were saying, well, can you play Willpower on him for free and then have it make it so that he's no longer dead. I think it's really difficult to say that that would actually work, because if it did work that way, he would effectively never die unless you killed him when he was ready, because willpower only moves health off of a exhausted character. My understanding of it is that he dies, the triggering condition for him to be defeated starts, and even though he moves the damage off of his character and he's not at 11 damage out of 11, he's already been triggered to be dead, and it's not a replacement effect, so he would still die. Naturally, when I read this, I say, wow, you can just basically just have whatever you want on him, and then when he goes to die, you can just throw one with the Force on him for free, which is really nice and kind of thematic too. I have to admit, this isn't the Obi-Wan that I was looking for and all the cool stuff from the Clone Wars and the movies and that sort of thing. The old creepy dude in the desert wasn't what I was hoping to see first, but it looks pretty good. I mean, 3 melee and 2 focus is pretty fantastic. The only issue that I find really strange about this guy is that he's a lot of points, which means that he's sort of your main character. And having a main character with Guardian is really strange, because you normally want the supporting character to take all the damage. Your opponent's going to want to kill Obi-Wan first anyway, so I guess you could use him to have his Guardian almost like a heroism, where you Guardian the 1 range damage that's there so that they can't resolve their +3 range damage or something along those lines. But I guess the theory is that you run him with, I don't know, like a single die ray or something like that, and you do a ton of damage with him, and then by the time he dies, Rey is decked out. Because if you're putting upgrades on single die Rey, I'm probably still going to beat on Obi-Wan Kenobi in the first place. So I guess it would function sort of like a Luke Akbar type deck, except Rey is actually going to be better suited to do some damage and survive and potentially win the game after Obi-Wan dies. So we'll see how this one goes. I'm not that impressed, but I definitely want to try decks with him. And frankly, any die that has 2 focus on it is great in my book, so we'll see. Next, we have the Delta 7 Interceptor. It is a 3-cost support. It's a vehicle. The dice sides are a 2 range, a 3 range for 1, a 1 focus, a shield, a special, and a blank. The special reads, reroll up to 3 dice, yours and or your opponent's. So the special is kind of interesting, because you can choose any combination of yours and your opponent's, which is really versatile. The die sides aren't bad, and again, it's one of these, you know, it's a 3-cost support, so the dice sides aren't not that impactful, and it slows down your deck, and I'm hoping that supports get better. I just don't see it right now. Next, we have the Handcrafted Light Bow. This one is a 3-cost upgrade weapon. Its dice sides show a 2 ranged, a 2 melee, a 1 shield, a 1 discard, a special, and a blank. The special gives you 2 choices here. It says deal 3 damage to a character. The other option is remove all shields from a character, then deal 2 damage to that character. So this guy basically has 3 damage sides. It ironically pairs well with Chirrut in that there are ranged and melee on both his dice and the Handcrafted Light Bow. And the special is just nuts. I mean, 3 damage to a character is great. And then if I've got 3 shields on a character, you're removing all the shields and doing 2 damage on top of that, which is effectively 5 damage. That's huge. So if you can get some specials off at the right times, this thing can be really worth it. I like that it has no modified sides and no pay sides as well, which is great. It does mix damage, which can slow things down if you're running it in, you know, say like something like a Rey Padawan deck. Since it's a weapon, you can get it out cheap on the Padawans. We'll see. I really like this one. I'm thinking it'll see a lot of play. Next, we have Force Heal. It is a 2-cost blue ability upgrade. The die sides are a 1 shield, a 1 resource, a 1 resource, a special, and a blank. The card reads blue character only. Special is heal 1 damage from a character or spend 1 resource to heal 2 damage from a character. I could see this thing being useful in a Qui-Gon Rey type deck where you got tons of shields and tons of heals, and you know, you just live forever. I mean, the tiebreakers are based on the amount of damage done, so if your opponent can't get through your shields, and when they do get through your shields you heal damage off them, you can stall enough to win on tiebreakers, I guess. The die is not that interesting aside from those specials, and the special isn't really that interesting either. I mean, it's nice that it's got 2 resources and neither of them are modified, but you don't really ramp up with a 2-cost upgrade, so it's kind of tough. I'd like it better if the heal 2 damage had a different requirement other than spending a resource, because resources are pretty precious in this game, but I could see how it could be useful at the right time. Next we have the Journals of Ben Kenobi. This one's a really interesting one. It is a 1-cost upgrade, not an ability. The die side shows a +1 melee, a resource, and then 3 blanks. So that is an unprecedented number of blanks. And this card has an action, which reads, remove this die to draw a card. So I'm not really sure what I think of this one. I feel like it should have been 0 cost and then had maybe a modified resource and a regular resource, because I mean, you put it out, half the time the die is going to be dead, and I guess the action makes up for it, because even if it rolls a blank, you can use the action to remove the die to draw a card, but it's just another extra action that's going to slow you down even further. And unlike most card games like the LCGs that I come from, I don't really find that drawing a card is all that powerful, since you can draw back up to 5 at the end of every round anyway. I'm going to play with it and see if it's any good, but I'm not really sold on it. Next, we move on to the cards that don't have any dice. We start off with a 0-cost event called Caution. Remove one of your character dice to give another character 3 shields. I really like this card. I mean, it has a cost, right? It doesn't cost resources, but its cost is you're removing one of your character dice. However, there's a bit of a restriction on it in that you can't remove the die of a character to give that character 3 shields. You have to give a different character 3 shields. So Rey's dice aren't very good, so removing one of her dice to give another character 3 shields sounds pretty fantastic. I think that one of the best blue hero decks that's going to be coming out of this set is actually still Qui-Gon Rey. If you look at a Qui-Gon Rey deck, removing a Rey die to give Qui-Gon 3 shields, or even vice versa, is pretty fantastic. Now, it doesn't say remove one of your blue character dice, so it does have synergy with non-mono decks. So this is definitely a card to keep an eye out for. Next we have Destiny. It is a 0-cost event. Remove any number of your blue dice. Play a card from your hand for free that costs equal to or less than the combined value of the blue dice you just removed. This to me is really interesting, because it almost functions sort of like a holocron. I mean, if you've got like a 1 shield and a +2 melee that you just got sitting around stray, and you can remove them and not pay any resources to put in a force throw, that's pretty fantastic. There's a lot of these events that I'm seeing in Spirit of the Rebellion that do have 0 cost as far as resources go, and it actually allows, when you're deck building, to put in more expensive blue upgrades, which makes the deck have more punch, of course. Next we have Determination. It is a 0-cost event. Play only if you have 1 or more dice showing a focus. Resolve one of your dice as if it was showing a different symbol. It keeps its original value. So this one is pretty interesting. It's sort of like Now You Will Die from the blue villains. The problem, of course, is you need to have focuses out, so you're looking at Obi-Wan Kenobi or the Jedi Acolytes and maybe some Luminara Unduli, because there aren't that many blue dice that have focus other than that. I suppose if you were playing something like a blue-yellow deck, you had Maz's Goggles or Maz in there, you'd have more focus. And so being able to resolve a 2 disrupt as 2 melee or something like that is pretty handy. I'm not really sold on this one because of that requirement to have die showing a focus. When you look at Now You Will Die, you know, I'd rather just pay the 1 to do it and not have to have a certain board state. But of course, this one allows you to resolve it as it was showing a different symbol, like C-3PO, rather than just has to be melee damage. So this could actually be pretty interesting in the right deck. Next we have Guard. Guard is a really, really, really good card. It is a 0-cost event. It says remove one of your blue dice showing melee damage to remove a number of an opponent's dice equal to the value of the dice you just removed. So if you have a +2 melee out on Rey or on a lightsaber or something like that, this allows you to, for 0 resources, remove that +2 melee die and get rid of any 2 of your opponent's dice. Doesn't matter if they have 2 or less value or what, you know, like they roll in a Millennium Falcon and oppose 3 range damage, and you just go, that's cool, I'll just guard those, boop, and they're gone. I mean, it is very, very powerful. And again, 0 cost. I mean, all the cost in these events we're seeing is that the cost is that you're removing a die. So this one definitely requires you to want to play a blue deck and have a lot of blue characters in the deck, because it is a blue die showing melee damage. It's very, very strong. Next we have Krayt Dragon Howl. It is a 0-cost event. It reads, spot a blue character to choose an opponent's die. That opponent chooses to either remove that die or discard the top 2 cards of their deck. It's pretty interesting. It's obviously a mill deck card. It has the same kind of restrictions as let the Wookiee win, in that your opponent gets to choose. So let's say that your opponent had no cards left in their deck. They could choose to discard the top 2 cards of their deck instead of losing a die. If your opponent has no dice, they can say, I'll remove a die, and then they don't have to discard the top cards from their deck. So you have to put your opponent into a position where they have to make a tough choice. I think it's best used in a rainbow hero mill deck with patience and that sort of thing in it. But of course, your opponent makes the choice themselves, and you have to have a blue character alive to do it. So if you're playing a deck that has Rey as the blue character and she's dead, then it's a dead card. It's interesting, but it doesn't guarantee a mill. So I think that that would probably be one of the first cards that you cut out of the rainbow mill deck, but I could be entirely wrong about that. Next we have My Ally is the Force. This is a 2-cost event with Ambush. It reads, resolve one of your blue dice without removing it from your pool. What I think is really interesting about this one is actually the Ambush. Let's say that you're playing a Luke Akbar deck, and you have that 3 melee on Luke. You pay 2, you resolve the 3 melee without removing it from your pool, and then guess what? It's Ambush, and it's still in your pool, so resolve it again. If you're using that to resolve a 2 focus, you can do it twice and resolve 4 focus effectively, and set your board to basically whatever you want. You could use it on a 2 shield die in a Qui-Gon deck, and basically fill up Qui-Gon with shields and hit your opponent for a damage. There's a lot of versatility to this one. It is 2 cost, which is a lot, but as you're seeing with all these other cards here, these events don't cost anything for the most part, and they also, like Destiny, there allows you to get upgrades in for cheaper. So it could be that after this set is released, the blue heroes actually have more money so that it's comparable to a villain deck running a holocron. It may be a bit much, but we'll see. Next we have Synchronicity. Really like the art on this one. It is a 0-cost event. It reads, play only if you have dice showing melee damage and shields. Deal 2 unblockable damage to a character. So this, it's meant for a specific deck. I think any deck with Qui-Gon in it would be natural. You don't have to remove the dice. It doesn't cost any resources, and you're dealing 2 unblockable damage to a character. This can be a pretty big surprise. The only caveat to it, of course, is that you have to have dice showing melee damage and shields, which doesn't always happen. But if your deck is full of melee damage dice and shield dice, then it's probably likely to happen. Next we have Your Eyes Can Deceive You. This is a 1-cost support, and it reads, after one of your dice rolls a shield, you may exhaust this support to turn an opponent's die to any side. I really like this card. I love these supports that have the after ability that you don't have to use an action, and they don't cost very much. They're non-unique, which means you can have 2 of them. I mean, I'm dying to run a Qui-Gon Rey deck with all these events that you're seeing here. Put out 2, Your Eyes Can Deceive You, roll in Qui-Gon, hit a shield, and just exhaust, and then blank 2 of your opponent's dice. It's just awesome. I guess there aren't necessarily that many dice that have shield sides, but I mean, if you got Qui-Gon and Luke's lightsaber and that sort of thing, quite a few there. If you build a deck around it, it can be pretty nasty. And of course, it doesn't have to be a blue die, which is always nice. And once again, with these supports, you don't have to resolve the die. It's just a matter of you roll the character in and boom, you blank some stuff. So even if your opponent goes first and rolls in a couple of good dice, you roll in Qui-Gon afterwards and you use the after ability to blank their dice before they get a chance to resolve them. It's pretty great. Lastly, we have Protective Mentor. It is a 0-cost upgrade, and it reads, attached character shields can be used to block damage dealt to any character. It's pretty interesting. I mean, again, with the Qui-Gon Rey deck, you're sitting there with shields on Qui-Gon, everyone's always beating on Rey, and you can just say, well, Qui-Gon's got 2 shields, and I want to leave 1 on him all the time to be able to use his ability to ping people for damage, so I'll just use up 1 of those shields on Rey to keep a damage off. For if you've got 3 shields, you can just go, oh, they're going to kill Rey? That's cool. I'll just use these 3 shields up, and then I'll get some more shields from something else. It's really interesting. It's not an ability, so it can actually go on Chirrut. The only downside to it, of course, is that it is an upgrade, so it takes up 1 of the slots in the character. But it's definitely interesting. I'm looking forward to trying it out. I'm always up for some shenanigans, and if your opponent is thinking that they can kill one of your characters and forgets about Protective Mentor, you can put a kink in their plans there. So that's it for our blue hero cards from the Spirit of the Rebellion. Keep an eye out for the next video coming in a few days. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe so we can continue to bring you Destiny content. Thanks for watching, everybody.